Thank you, Abraham. Here's my dilemma. I launch my desire. I feel very clear and strongly about what I want to do and positive changes I want to make in my life. I'm a mother of 2 small children, an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. I want to change my old past patterns. However, how can I stand firm with that and continue to do that when I have a husband who is not at all in that same vibrational believing, and in fact doesn't even believe in what I believe in?
Well, what's your husband got to do with your vibration? He can't get in there and vibrate in you.
I understand that, but
it's your attention to him that is messing up your vibration.
Yes.
So what you're saying is, how can I find the power to offer a vibration that pleases me when I've got someone that I'm observing that causes me to offer a vibration that I don't want to offer?
Exactly.
We say, well, that's why we began here today as we did, that the only thing that is relevant is where I am relative to where I want to be. So we're going to dramatize this for you just to make it fun and obvious what's happening. So you say, here I'm living and I've launched this clear idea. We heard you and we could feel that. I have this clear idea. So there's me and my clear idea. The only 2 things that matter. Except for him. There's me and my clear idea, and that's all that matters, except for him. So there's my clear idea and where I am and him. And he's an increasingly big part of where I am. If he would just clean up his act. And we say, you have to disregard anyone outside of your vibration. When you give your attention to anything, you activate it in you. So what you want to do is activate within you the parts of him that match what you want. And there are some. It's a matter of focusing. It's about training yourself to focus in a way that feels good rather than just sloppily looking at whatever. When you go to a buffet, do you just let them pile anything on your plate?
No.
Really?
No.
You don't just say,
Bring
it's
it
up
on.
to you. You mean you choose?
I do.
So why don't you do that with your husband? Does he pile it on your plate?
Yes, he's very strong.
Well, we thought that's what you'd say, because it does feel a little bit like people who are strong in personality can assert themselves into your experience. But there's a little trick or technique that if you will apply it, you'll start to get some relief in this. And we call it making peace with where you are. In other words, there are a lot of people who really need cooperation from everybody around them before they believe they can begin moving toward where they want to go. And we want to say to you, you don't need cooperation from anybody but yourself. But you've got to stop pushing against the parts of others that feel like they're not going the way you want. In other words, you got to clean up your own vibration, and you do that by disregarding some of it or by sifting through it and finding the best of it. What do you think is the behavior that stands out the most in your husband's personality that feels hindering to you?
The negativity, aggression.
So are you saying to us that he is angry?
Yes.
And what have you heard so far here today about why anyone would have that knee-jerk response of anger? Why do you think he's moving to anger?
Well, I don't know about whether he's moving to anger, but I know that I've moved to anger.
Well, that's logical,
Yeah.
but let's talk about him just for a moment.
Okay.
So he's angry, and what does that mean? If you're looking at him objectively as a teacher or a counselor or someone who loves him, and you see him in anger, what do you think he's chosen anger over?
Pain.
And pain of what?
His past.
And a past that feels like disempowerment?
Yes.
So his anger is the way that, without really knowing it, he tries to take control of his life back. And don't you respect that? Wouldn't you sort of like to pat him on the back and say, love, I would rather that you are in your anger than in fear? Couldn't you give him that? Now, if you're in fear of his anger, then that's a hard one for you to do. But if you can objectively stand back a little bit, as we do, if we met your husband and we saw him in pain and in memory of his past, we'd be coaching him into anger. And you'd say, oh, Abraham, thanks a lot. Now he's taking it out on me. I liked him better when he was depressed. You hardly even knew him when he was depressed because the depression was so awful that he's been practicing the art of anger for a long time, you see. So when we say make peace with something, this is a mechanism where you can make peace with this. Because when you think about it, now try just for a moment to just be where you are, thinking about your hard-to-live-with husband and the anger and aggression that he displays. And just ask yourself on a visceral level, on how it feels in your stomach. Would you rather that he was in despair and fear, or would you rather, for his sake, that he were in anger?
Oh, for sure, anger.
All right, so now you've just made a little bit of peace with that. In other words, you've just closed the gap. You just found relief as you thought about the subject of your husband. You feel better about him right now than you have in a long time. He became less of a hindering factor between where you are and what you want than he's been in a long time, because you soothed yourself relative to him, you see. What happens with most is one feels despair and finds anger, which gives you the choice of either despair or anger. So you find despair or anger. That's where all this victim and all of this co-creation comes on. There are so many people that are co-conspirators in these relationships, and the psychiatrists and psychologists have given them all kinds of labels like codependent and how they're bringing the worst out in each other. But we say what you're really trying to do is gain your own ground. And when you gain a little ground, then you've got more leeway so that you can help someone else. It's interesting as we feel the vibration around you and around all of this. And there are many who are like this, where when you came together, he was offering an attitude of authority and security. In other words, he looked like he was in charge. And that felt good to you because you wanted somebody to be in charge. You had enough vulnerability and feeling of not enoughness going on within you that you were looking for someone who could lead you. What you didn't realize is that he was leading from his place of demanding his power. In other words, he wasn't leading from connection to source. He wasn't leading from his total self. He wasn't leading from clarity. But you know what? And we say this lovingly, and we want you to not worry about it at all. You didn't have access to somebody like that from where you were.
Oh, I understand that.
You had access to him. In other words, you were vibrational matches for each other, and what he offered you was the next logical step from where you were, you see. But then sort of what you're saying is, but I wanted you to be everything that I believed you were. And we say, but the universe brought you together because of what you were, and it was the next logical step. Don't need somebody to be more than they are. Just be grateful for what they were, you see. Is that making sense?
Yes.
That's really powerful, you see. So now you say, okay, I get that. We were vibrational matches, and he looked like somebody who could lead me and guide me. In other words, you walked into that full knowing. And then as I began to gather a little bit of my own security, and as he seemed to lose a little bit of his, then our relationship started to disintegrate a little bit. And we say, doesn't matter. You can now be the vibrational leader, but don't tell him. He's not going to take kindly to the idea that you are leading him, but you can by bringing the best out of him. In other words, as you make lists of the things that you appreciate about him, go home today and make a list of the way your life improved when you met him, and make a list of why you wanted to be with him. You can remember why you wanted to be with him and reactivate that within yourself. And then on another page, make a list of the positive aspects that you see so that you activate the very best of him in you. And it is our promise that as soon as tomorrow, more of the best of him will be reflected in your own experience, you see. It happens every single time. There are people who say...